Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Readings with John. I'm John, and this is another collective reading. I'm going to do things a little bit different today. I want to do a past, present, and future with the future focused on the month of July that we're in right now. Because I'm just curious, what happens if I specifically focus the intention on the now moment, right? So this reading is going to be for anyone that has experienced a loop in which you went and did the right thing, right? It was a no good deed goes unpunished situation. And effectively, that made you question your identity because you were doing the right thing. You were doing what you thought you were supposed to do, but it blew up in your face time and time again, right? It's feeling like a loop. So it doesn't have to be with one specific person, but I do feel like there was something that happened specifically in the recent past that was like the final nail in the coffin, if that makes sense. And again, it would be in situations that specifically kind of prey upon your empathy. And I'm seeing that with the heal the ouch card in the beginning, that you would be the healer, this little raccoon that's showing up, where it's like the analogy of a nurse, right? If a nurse has a patient on her floor in the hospital, she just does what she's got to do, or he just does what he's got to do, right? There's no questions about it, but that's your job, that's your service, that's your duty. So you show up and you do the right thing, right? So, if somebody shows up at your doorstep for some kind of healing, you're absolutely going to open the door for that, right? But when I first pulled this card, the Heal the Ouch card, I heard a song quote from the Lauryn Hill song X Factor. And it was a line from the chorus in which she says, "When I try to walk away, you hurt yourself to make me stay," right? So this is in situations where it's like the guilt and the empathy and all of that is not just the thing that lures you into the situation, but it's also the thing that kind of gets you stuck there, right? And confuses your own intuition and things like that. Because even if it's a circumstance where like intuitively you feel like something's not right, I really shouldn't be doing this anymore. I feel like the intentions are not pure in terms of what's happening on the other side of the table. But you're still there because it's like walking away makes you feel just as guilty or just as bad as staying, right? Something like that. But again, it's like it would be a situation where, finally you do find the strength to walk away from a situation, say a job, right? Maybe you're in a job situation where you're just not being treated with the respect, or you're not being seen, or blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you make that intention in your mind. You're like, that's it. I'm walking away. I'm putting myself first. This is the boundary. And then the next day you go in and miraculously everybody's treating you so good, and now all of a sudden they have this other thing and how much they love you and how much they need you, and oh, there might be a raise, and then the sob story of your boss has their own personal drama going on, and thank you so much because I've been going through this, even though they treated you disrespectfully up until then. You know what I'm saying? It could be any kind of situation, but that's the algorithm. And what I'm seeing with the clarifier, the hanged man reversed, is that this particular hanged man, let me see if I can pull it up so you can see. There's that little bit of rope on the floor that you can see beneath his foot, right? And I'm seeing this as somebody that's doing a jig. It reminds me of that scene from Titanic where they're in the basement dancing, right? And they're all doing a little Irish jig around. And this is you doing your thing, right? When somebody needs healing, you show up. That's just you. When it's your modus operandi, right? Whatever. What am I trying to say? Because it's like this fox on the card that's requiring the healing, right? Deceptive, sly fox knows what your song is, knows your thing, right? So this is somebody that's dancing to their song, right? When you call Superman, he shows up. When you put up the bat signal, Batman shows up. But what I'm seeing with this little piece of rope on the floor is that it's like doing an Irish jig when there's nails on the floor, right? When there's like a nail poking out of the floorboard that you could step on. And it's almost like there's some kind of like karmic transference that's happening here. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's like they're in pain. You're going to them as the healer. The way that it's supposed to work is that you're supposed to heal them, neutralize whatever that thing is, and then move on, right? But somehow the pain, the issue, the karma, whatever it is being like transferred onto you. That's what I'm seeing with the nail on the floor. And it's like time and time again, it's like no good deed goes unpunished. It's like, why? How is it possible that you're showing up and doing the right things in all of this? And it seems like everything's going great for the people that you're healing, but then all of a sudden there's backlash or what it is. And it's like that must have something to do with some sort of contracts, right? Because if it is going to be karma transference or karma piracy or anything like that, then it's like there would have to be some sort of language magic contract in the dynamic that this character, again, multiple. I don't think that it would be just one, but this archetype of individual somehow is able to, again, transfer that pain, that karma, whatever it is, onto you. And theoretically is most likely the reason why they want you to stay around, because of the fact that you're doing the cleanup, right? It's almost like you're acting like the energetic liver, but the toxins that you're pulling out are damaging the liver itself, right? And what I'm seeing here in the now moment with coming apart and the strength card underneath it, you can see on the coming apart card that there's two masks here, right? So what I'm seeing to that is like the reaction to the situation over time is like, if always playing the good guy is a no good deed goes unpunished situation and my kindness just gets taken for weakness and whatever, then fine, I'm done being the good guy. I'm going to be a hard ass, right? It's that kind of energy of like, if this didn't work for me, then I'm going to try that. But that is not you, right? So you try that doesn't work. So then you go, well, maybe I'm just going to be neutral and indifferent, right? But you can't be neutral and indifferent because you have a heart, right? So it just kind of is what it is. So it's this oscillation between all of these different things. And what it's reminding me of is something I actually just saw a couple days ago that was talking about, when people experience a lot of trauma, especially in their youth, the inevitable consequence of that is what they call a personality split, right? And we hear about this in much more extreme circumstances and guises in terms of things that induce those different personalities. But I honestly think it is so much more subtle that it happens to all of us. And I'm starting to think that all of this fractal integration that I've been talking about might be talking about kind of pulling in all of these different personalities, almost like undoing the fractalization process, the shattering that's kind of happened to us in terms of doing the right thing, acting intuitively, that goes wrong. So then you have an identity crisis. You think, well, let me act like the bad guys act because it seems like it works for them. And then of course that's not you. And then that causes more trauma and blah, blah. So you get what I'm saying, where it's like, that's what's causing this fractalization and we become these different characters and it's the idea of basically having different personalities for different people, right? I think that's so common. So many of us have that, where it's like, you have your work personality, but then you have different personalities for different friend groups and family personalities and different personalities within your family for different members, right? And this is also very much so the allegory of Osiris, right? Because in all of those stories with Osiris, he gets cut up, right? He gets cut up by Set, and then Set scatters him across the world, right? And Isis eventually comes in and she's the one that has to remember him, right? So memories, remembrance, remembering who you are. And we're going through this remembrance process and effectively separating the wheat from the chaff, right? Because some of these masks are not us, but some things we've designated as masks that actually are us, if that makes sense, right? So, but this loop of constantly going through the healing the ouch, where you respond to the call with pure intentions, you do your thing that's supposed to go a particular way, it's supposed to end well, but then you wound up stepping on the nail, right? And again, it's like, I think something happened relatively recently. I want to say around the eclipse, right? Because that's what I've said in every reading, but it could be different. It could have been after the eclipse. It could have been before, but it's like something happened recently that was that final nail, proverbially, that eventually triggered this like seismic activity that I'm seeing with coming apart, because I'm actually seeing it as like a fault line opening or something like that, which I guess is interesting, right? In terms of because I'm talking about fractal integration and remembrance, right? But it is like there's something that's cracking, and the thing that's cracking, I think, is the defense shield that you yourself would have put up after these encounters, right? It's like there would have been the first shield you put up the first time, and then the 100th shield that you put up the 100th time, right? And that's all of these different layers that are kind of cracking. And the strength card underneath here, the force card, is what's clarifying that for me, because I'm seeing this lion that's at the bottom of the card here as if you've ever played with a dog, right? And they grab something that they're playing with. It's like as soon as you try to pull it away from them, they double down on it and they just like lock their jaw. It's like that's what I'm seeing in terms of what you've done around your heart, for lack of a better term, right? Because these wounds most likely would have been wounds on the heart. They could have been real physical ailments and things like that, and negative karmic experiences, all of the above. Again, mostly I'm thinking mostly in the past, in terms of, these things would have played out regularly before the eclipse in the underworld, in that old space. Since the eclipse, though, if anybody tried this, right, that absolutely would have been the final nail, because now the veil is gone, right? You can actually see things for what they are, and it would explain why it would have triggered this activation process. Maybe that's the best way to describe it, right? Because what I'm really seeing with this coming apart, and the fault line analogy, right, of like the ground opening, is like, well, what I'm literally seeing is like a Godzilla kind of like coming out of the earth. But using that, it's an intense analogy, but using that as like the analogy of the true self finally waking up after all of this nonsense, whatever it is that was put to sleep probably the first time, right? Because again, it's like I feel like the younger we are when these things happen, the more intense the fracture is, or the split, or whatever. And again, so it's like this strength card energy is kind of showing me the lockdown that would have happened on the heart, and that lock would have been other masks, and other layers and other personalities that we develop to either protect ourselves or dissociate from whatever this is, or just try to grin and bear it, etc. And what's happening next in terms of future energies is this deep freeze card. And I'm seeing this deep freeze as the Godzilla that was buried underneath the earth, that was buried under all of these different layers of programs and protection, and masks, etc., etc. And I'm seeing it literally as in Star Wars when Han Solo gets frozen in the carbonite, and then somehow can be unfrozen from the carbonite, that this is you being unfrozen from the carbonite. But if you remember, when Princess Leia deactivates and unfreezes him, for the first couple of minutes or days, I'm not really sure, it's like he has to regain his senses. So the first thing he says to her is, "I can't see," right? So it just might take a moment to kind of get your bearings and find yourself as this is coming together. But again, it's like, it's not that you can't see. You were seeing through the lens of these masks, right? That it's almost like, call them rose colored glasses or poop colored glasses, whatever you want to call them. You were seeing through those lenses, and those are the things that have been removed, right? So now it's like, imagine if you were wearing 20 pairs of sunglasses and you take those off and you're seeing the light for the first time, right? It's like your eyes are adjusting to that. And that's being clarified by the Temperance card here. And let me see if I can just pull it up so you can see how the Temperance card is staring directly at this lion in the Force card, right? The thing that it's like trying again to like open the jaws of a dog that's grabbed a sock that you want to try to pull out of the dog's mouth, right? But it's like the harder you pull, the harder the dog clenches, right? It's like that kind of thing. So Temperance here is like doing this very delicate kind of time sensitive process to recalibrate the identity, and again, like separate the wheat from the shaft, because it's trying to discern, okay, so what is actually an aspect of your truth, like a true aspect of your persona, and what was something that you developed as a defense mechanism or a survival mechanism or something like that. Because again, it's like I think the matrix itself was so scrambled for so long that it's almost like there's a group up there in the control room, let's call them the auditors, right? And they're just kind of like going through and trying to figure out who's who in the zoo, what actually belongs to us, what's inauthentic, et cetera, et cetera. And it's almost like I had an analogy a while ago, so I'm just going to throw this out there that it's like, you know, the mythology of vampires that they can't be seen in the sun, right? So I've had this analogy that ever since the invention of sunscreen, the Matrix has no idea who's who because it's like it can't distinguish the vampires from the real people, if that makes sense. Because now the vampires can walk out in the sun because they have sunscreen and umbrellas and sunglasses and masks, right? So it's like that's an aspect maybe of the karma transference, right? What I was talking about, where it's like, how is that even possible? But it seems like, again, it's like there's something in the naivety of it all, like fool card energy, where it's like going in with no particular expectations, right? Because when the healer answers the call of the individual that needs to get healed, right, it is almost like a there is a bit of a fool card energy when you do that, because you kind of just trust whatever situation it is that you're in, right? And again, there's something in the language magic of those nervous awkward moments. So going back to the analogy of, say this is a work environment where you have your Lauryn Hill moment, where you finally find the strength to walk away, and then the person or the work environment that you're trying to walk away from comes up as wounded or something like that, and maybe low key apologizes for something, right? And says, "Oh, I'm sorry for X, Y, and Z, and it's been so hard, but I'm sure you understand," right? And then the language magic is you don't establish your boundaries and say, honestly, I don't understand because that wasn't very nice. Instead, you say, no, no, I get it. It's okay. It's all good, right? How many times have we said it's all good? And then bloop, you step right on the nail, right? I think there's something about that. But the magic of magic and time travel and how powerful we are as creator beings that don't need to do black magic, you can reclaim your time. There's something to be said about that, reclaiming your time. And that's actually what I'm seeing here with I pulled three clarifiers to clarify the future energy that we're looking at, just so we can get a little bit more energy. And I pulled the Hermit, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Four of Wands. And what I heard was reclaiming your time. It's time. That was literally, I'm trying to think of like a movie where that's the analogy, but I'm just picturing like somebody that's about to get on stage and they're in the green room doing their hair and makeup, looking in the vanity with all the lights around them, putting on that last layer of powder, last layer of power. That's funny. And somebody knocks on the door and they say, knock, knock, it's time. That's the Hermit here, is saying, knock, knock, it's time, with the Wheel of Fortune. And suddenly, the Four of Wands here is making itself visible. And the Four of Wands is basically talking to me about, I mean, it's looking like a portal kind of opening up, but it's kind of like a rendered action plan, if that makes sense. Because I guess one of the primary issues with, you know, when I finally find the strength to walk away, you hurt yourself to make me stay, is that it screws up the energy of the action plan, right? Because if you are ready to walk away from something, let's say the work environment, and all of a sudden you have the future rendered and the path is clear and you get it because you're vibing with your true self, it's like something reactivates these masks when this wounds itself again to make you stay, and it's like all of a sudden you can't see the path forward anymore, right? But it's like something has happened now that it's like this old trick don't work no more. And not only do you see the path forward, but you also see the nails on the floor because you've already stepped on them a few times. So this is kind of showing me that it's like the Four of Wands is very much so the energy of holding the vision, right? Where it's like you are committed to your vision. Whatever it is now is unwaverable, unshakable, excuse me. But it's that strength card energy, right? It's this deep freeze that's coming out. It's your inner Han Solo, your inner whatever that's finally tempered, right? Because temperance again talks about the energy of creating our strength, really. And because if you think of the energy of like tempered steel or tempered glass, I know I use this analogy a lot, but those are indestructible materials that have been created through these long fluctuations of pressure and temperature and time. And time was like a clear key ingredient here, right? But this again is the past. It's like we've been through the tempering process, the dark night of the soul, all of that, and it's all kind of happened in this careful and perfect measure, that it's like as this thing starts to emerge, which is already emerging now, it's an indomitable, unstoppable kind of force, right? Because it's tempered. It is an unbreakable material. The vision plan that you have, the path for yourself, your will, your courage, your strength at this point is tempered. It is indestructible. But again, there's a rumble, right? So it's rumbling. So remember, it's not just you. It's the masks that are coming off. But again, it's also as those different fractals integrate and those masks get put away and we reclaim the ones that are of ourselves and aren't of ourselves. It's like I think that there could be something that shifts in terms of memory and relationships. There could be memories that come back. Because one thought that I've had is like, if you do have different kinds of personalities and things like that, right? And I'm not talking about extremes. I'm talking about, just different voices and cadences that you use when you're interacting with different people. It's like, do we have different memories in those moments too? Like certain memories that are accessible, certain memories that aren't accessible. How would we even know? That's another question that I have. And then in terms of those because I've noticed too that it's like there's certain people that I interact with where it's like I have like pre-programmed scripts or prompts or things that I say, and it's like there will be things that I want to react to with certain people and things that I do want to say, but I don't say it. Right? It's like my brain and my tongue are disconnected in that moment, and it feels like, again, it's like an autopilot kind of situation. It's not all the time, but it's usually in more uncomfortable situations where I am just kind of forcing a degree of dialogue. So that could be what it's talking about here too, is that it's like typically you find yourself going on autopilot and using the pre-programmed prompts and scripts and not saying what you want to say and not being able to remember even why you were mad. Oh, there we go, in terms of accessing memories, right? Where it's like, how do we find ourselves in these same loops again? It's like, because sometimes it's like somehow we forget things that we shouldn't forget, but we do. And and now I think it's coming up to the point where all of the sudden you can find the strength to say what you want to say, that it's like the thing that typically stopped you, or the thing that typically was able to get you to turn around, is no longer effective. And one thing that I say too is that for a lot of light workers, it's like our final boss in the matrix is not somebody that approaches you like an a-hole telling you to go after yourself. Sorry for the language, but you know what I'm saying. It's somebody that comes up with the sob story. That's what gets us, right? If we feel like somebody needs our help, if we feel like somebody is hurting, if somebody, that's what'll slow us down. So if you are, again, it can apply to any situation where it's like 9 times out of 10, you've probably left a job knowing that you were somewhat irreplaceable. And there's a degree of guilt that can come with that, right? Maybe not guilt for the business, but maybe there's people on your team or at your level that you know that your presence greatly benefits and influences and blah, blah, blah. But it could be, it can be anything. But that's effectively what I'm seeing right now, is that it's like you're finally stable within yourself enough, like you know who you are well enough, that this is finally opening up. And that was actually the aspect of the love reading too that I just posted, that it's like, for those of us, the light workers that have been out there for a minute single but ready to mingle, it's like that new thing is finally coming in and manifesting because you know who you are. So therefore, it's like your true match can find you because you're in your true energy. You're not in any of these false energies, right? And that's honestly, it goes back to why I think the Matrix was so upside down and backwards and blah, 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 is because not only did it not exactly know who we were, but we didn't know who we were. So we couldn't even help it try to figure out who we are and what we want and blah, blah, blah. And again, for so often, we've only known what we don't want. We don't know what we do want. So that was the other aspect of the love reading, right? It's like when the universe asks us what we want, we'll say, well, I hate this, I hate that, and I hate the third. And they'd be like, okay, well, but what do you want? And 9 times out of 10, we'd be like, well, I really don't know, because everything I've tried has blown up in my face. The good things, the bad things, the neutral things. And now it's coming to this point where, again, I think a lot of us are reclaiming not just reclaiming our time, but also reclaiming your passions, right? Because you didn't necessarily have to be a healer in this situation. Just about anything you do is healing, right? You could just be the bookkeeper, but you still have a healing presence, right? Not just the bookkeeper, right? That's an important thing. You could be the lawyer, you could be the doctor, you could be the firefighter, but it's like it's all of that is an act of service, no matter what you're doing. I mean, I've even just worked at, a shoe store, and I that was an act of service, right? Where it was like I knew that my presence was healing everybody that I was interacting with. And it's something like that, where it's like you always had the best intentions, but then the weird no good deed goes unpunished, or the road to hell is paved with good intentions, whatever you want to call it. That was the algorithm. So it created all of these fractals and splits and not knowing who we are and what to do. But we're not in that space anymore. So now we can see, and we can see not just what was false, but what was true that we should reclaim. So reclaiming our time, it's time to perform, time to go on stage, time to actually experience, the castle on the hill, so to speak, right? Because what the Four of Wands really is the fantasy, right? This is what you want to commit to. This is what you've been trying to work for. It's the finish line, right? So it's like this character, the fox, would have probably always dangled the invisible carrot, right? Once you do what you're supposed to do, once you heal, then we're going to talk about this down the line. There's this opportunity. It's coming. It's coming. Just keep dancing, and you'll step on a couple more nails, but it'll be worth it, right? And now you're in this point where you realize, oh wait, I never actually needed your permission because I was the key holder for this castle, and I've decided that it's time. I can now actually react from my authentic self. I'm not using any of these pre-programmed mask scripts, right? I've integrated my split fractal personalities and all of that fun stuff. My Han Solo is defrosting, and I can see exactly where I am in Jabba's palace, and me and Leia are getting the F out of here. So that's what I got for you here. I'm going to go and pull some more cards in the extended and see what we can pull out about as this unfolds. What do we need to know about getting to this castle on the hill? What do we need to know about expediting this? I'm going to pull a Celtic cross, so that's going to be what's next, why, what you'll see in your environment, the next choice points that are coming up, the role that you're supposed to play in that, the role that others are going to play in that, the role that Spirit's playing in that. And that's going to be available through my Sellfy website. So Sellfy is a brand new service that I'm using. It's a sliding scale. The collective starts at $5 and up. So pay as you go, and you can either stream it through the website or download it directly. It's up to you. You get both choices when you purchase it. And of course, I also have personal readings. So if you're interested in that, you'll find all the info in the description box below. I love you guys. I hope you had a beautiful 4th, and have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.